There is a specific kind of sorrow that strikes the human heart so violently it threatens to shatter faith entirely. It is the grief that arrives completely unannounced, standing over a hospital bed, a sudden accident, or a small casket. When a soul is taken from this world decades before their time, when a young life full of promise and goodness is suddenly extinguished, a terrifying silence follows. In that silence, the broken-hearted look up to heaven with a desperate, agonizing accusation. We ask how a loving father could steal a child from a mother, a husband from a bride, or a devout youth from a world that desperately needs light. This pain, this agonizing mystery of premature death feels like the ultimate injustice. We weep, we tremble, and we demand to know why God would allow the beautiful to die young while the wicked live to see their hair turn gray. If you have ever carried the unbearable weight of this question, or if you seek to understand the hidden mysteries of God's providence in a broken world, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. We are building a community dedicated to the deepest, most serious truths of the Catholic faith, far from the shallow answers of the modern world. Please take a moment to comment your city and country below, so we can see how far this spiritual family reaches across the earth, united in our search for eternal meaning. In the 14th century, a noblewoman named Bridget of Sweden wrestled with these exact agonies. She was not a cloistered nun shielded from the brutalities of the world, but a mother of 8 children, a widow, and a woman who had walked through the disease-ridden streets of medieval Europe. She had seen plague tear through families, wiping out the young and the innocent in a matter of days. The sheer volume of human suffering, she observed, pierced her soul. Because she was granted the extraordinary grace of direct, mystical dialogue with Christ, she did not hide her anguish. She took the weeping of the world directly to the throne of God. In her approved revelations, Saint Bridget brought the agony of the bereaved to Jesus. She asked him the question that burns on the lips of every grieving parent. Why are the young taken? Why does the sickle of death cut down the green stalks before they can bear the full fruit of their lives? To our earthly eyes, it appears as a senseless tragedy, a violent interruption of a story just beginning. We measure a human life by decades, careers, marriages, and earthly achievements. When those are denied, we perceive a robbery. But the answer Jesus revealed to Saint Bridget shatters this earthly illusion. It is a revelation of such profound love that it completely reverses our understanding of what it means to die young. Jesus revealed to Saint Bridget that his vision of a human life is entirely different from ours. We see only the present moment and the past. We project our hopes onto a future that does not yet exist. But God stands outside of time. He sees the entirety of a soul's existence in a single glance. He sees not only what a person is today, but precisely what they will become tomorrow, next year, and a decade from now. Christ explained to his mystic that a soul, no matter how pure or devout it may appear in its youth, remains profoundly fragile. The human will is weak, and the landscape of this earthly exile is filled with hidden traps and seductive voices that draw even the most steadfast hearts toward the abyss of mortal sin. Using a piercing metaphor, Jesus explained to Bridget that he is the divine gardener, and the souls of men are his flowers. When a gardener sees a magnificent storm approaching, a storm of black clouds and violent winds, he does not leave his most precious flowers out in the open to be shredded. He walks into the garden and plucks them. He cuts them from the stem not to kill them, but to bring them inside the safety of his home before the storm hits. To the flower, the cut is sudden. To the other plants, it seems like a violent removal. But in reality, it is a rescue. Christ revealed that many young souls are taken early precisely because he sees a devastating spiritual storm gathering on their horizon. We weep because we do not see the future that God prevented. Jesus showed Bridget that if some of these young, seemingly good individuals had been allowed to live the long lives their families desperately prayed for, they would have ultimately been lost forever. The passage of time is not always a blessing. For many, it is simply a longer rope with which to hang themselves. Christ sees the unseen intersections of the future. He knows that in 5 years a devout young man would meet someone who would slowly poison his faith. He knows that in 10 years an innocent girl would be overcome by a temptation that would plunge her into unrepentant darkness. The pressures of the world would eventually erode their goodness until nothing was left but a corrupted heart. Therefore, the sudden death we call a tragedy is, in the divine ledger, an act of supreme mercy. God looks at the soul of the young person and sees that right now, at this exact moment, they are in a state of grace. He sees that their heart is open to him, capable of being saved. But he also sees that if he waits, if he grants them the decades their loved ones are begging for, that state of grace will be lost. The soul will turn away, embrace mortal sin, and die in a state of final impenitence. Faced with letting them live a long earthly life that ends in the eternal fires of hell, or taking them prematurely to guarantee their eternal joy in heaven, the absolute mercy of God chooses the latter. He acts with the swift strike of a surgeon cutting away a limb to save the patient. To understand the sheer magnitude of this divine intervention, we must recognize our profound blindness regarding the true nature of time. We suffer under the illusion that a long life is the ultimate blessing and a short life is a curse. We mourn the unwritten chapters, the uncelebrated weddings, and the children never born. But heaven does not measure the value of an existence by the turning of calendar pages. A soul is placed on this earth for one terrifyingly important purpose: to choose God and be forged into a state capable of enduring the beatific vision. Once the divine intellect determines that a soul has reached its maximum potential for holiness before a catastrophic fall, the mission is complete. A life that ends at 19 is not an unfinished life. In the eyes of eternity, it may be a masterpiece perfectly concluded. To add another year to it would only risk ruining the image. The grief of those left behind remains a crushing weight. The mother who buries her child still wakes up to an empty room, and theological truth can sometimes feel like cold comfort in the raw agony of loss. But this is where the spiritual battle is fought. Despair whispers that the pain is pointless, that God has abandoned the grieving family. To fight this darkness, we must arm ourselves with the profound wisdom of the saints who saw past the veil of tears. If you are seeking to build this kind of spiritual armor, consider joining our inner circle of channel members. By becoming a member, you gain access to exclusive weekly videos and special spiritual benefits designed to deepen your faith and protect your peace in times of trial. Your membership allows us to keep producing these essential Catholic narratives. You can join by selecting the membership option on our channel, uniting with a community that refuses to surrender to despair. When we lift our eyes from the grave and look toward the throne of judgment, as St. Bridget was allowed to do, the reality of what has transpired becomes breathtaking. She saw that when a soul is taken early to prevent its damnation, that soul experiences an overwhelming explosion of gratitude upon realizing what it has just escaped. At the moment of particular judgment, the veil of time is lifted. The young man who died suddenly looks back and sees the exact path his life would have taken. He sees the specific temptations lying in wait, the precise moment his faith would have collapsed under worldly pressure, the mortal sins he would have embraced, and the horrifying reality of eternal separation from God. Seeing the abyss he was about to fall into, the departed soul does not complain to God about a shortened life. Instead, he falls in adoration before the just judge, trembling with profound thanksgiving. The soul realizes that the tragic accident was not a punishment, but a rescue mission deployed at the last possible second. The soul cries out in gratitude for the sickle of death that cut him down while he was still wearing his baptismal garment. He understands that the very event his family is mourning on earth is the exact reason he will sing the mercies of God for all eternity. The war is over, and he was pulled from the battlefield just before the fatal blow was struck. This revelation forces us to confront the terrifying danger of our earthly attachments. We are often so desperate to keep our loved ones with us that we unknowingly pray against their eternal salvation. There is a deep wisdom in Catholic tradition warning against demanding our own will over the divine will. When we stand before the crucifix begging God to spare a life, we must always add the caveat of Christ in the garden: "Not my will, but yours be done." To demand that God extend a life simply because we cannot bear the pain of parting is to ask God to prioritize our temporary emotional comfort over the eternal safety of a human soul. God's apparent deafness to our desperate prayers for physical healing is often his most profound expression of love. Furthermore, The visions illuminate the dignity of the suffering endured by the families left behind. The tears of a grieving mother are not wasted. When united to the sorrows of the Blessed Virgin Mary at the foot of the cross, the agony of earthly loss becomes a powerful currency of grace. God allows this tearing of the heart because the grief itself, if carried with faith, burns away the earthly attachments of the survivors. The sudden death shatters the illusion that this world is our permanent home. It forces the grieving family to lift their eyes toward heaven, completely reorienting their spiritual lives. The early departure of one family member often becomes the exact anchor that pulls the rest of the family into paradise. We must fundamentally change our vocabulary regarding death. We must stop calling a premature death a tragic waste and begin recognizing it as a severe mercy. The enemy of our souls wants us to look at a cemetery and see only defeat, silence, and the cruel theft of potential. But the revelations of the mystics pull back the curtain on this demonic lie. A cemetery is not a place of defeat. For those who died in grace, it is the waiting room of the resurrection. If you have lost someone you love long before you were ready to let them go, do not let the enemy convince you they were stolen by cruel fate. They were carefully, deliberately chosen. The divine gardener saw the approaching storm. He saw the fragility of their soul, and he moved with the uncompromising power of infinite love. He brought them inside. The pain of their absence is the heavy cross you are asked to carry for a little while longer, but it leads to an empty tomb. Hold fast to the knowledge that the separation is strictly temporary. Soon, the veil will be lifted for you as well, and you will understand with perfect clarity that God makes no mistakes.